If that clip just triggered your fight or flight response, my apologies for springing it on you. If not, hi and welcome. I'm your host, Adri. Today, I'd like to take you on a journey back to the not-so-distant past and explore the phenomenon known as Hetalia. But first, let me get changed into something more appropriate. Alright, let's get started. What is Hetalia? In 2006, a man named Hidekazu Himaruya decided to sit down and create a webcomic. Little did he know, this webcomic would soon captivate a massive online audience, and perhaps ruin a few lives along the way. This webcomic was called Hetalia, a portmanteau of hetare, meaning hopeless, and Italia, translating loosely to Hopeless Italy. The original webcomic was hosted on Himaruya's, also known as Himapapa's, website called Kitayume, and was shut down with the closure of GeoCities. In 2008, after gaining a devoted fanbase, Hetalia was picked up for publication. Fun fact, the manga is still ongoing. In 2010, Studio Dean adapted it into an animated series. So, what is Hetalia about? Hetalia features a cast of characters who are personified representations of various countries, interacting in humorous and over-the-top ways. The story draws loosely on historical events and international relations, presenting them in a quirky and comedic light. The series begins around World War II, although much of the content veers away from the gritty reality, opting for a more lighthearted approach. The characters appear in historical scenarios, but they also hang out in alternate universes where they're high school students, gangsters, cats, or even mochis? Mochis? Right. We'll get to that. The anime and webcomic are both episodic, with events presented in a non-chronological order, and each episode only lasts about 5 minutes, a perfect length for gaining popularity in online spaces. Let's take a look at our cast. The first 2 seasons are titled Axis Powers Hetalia, giving us a hint at who the main characters are. The cast is divided into 2 main groups, the Axis Powers and the Allies.
I'm so sorry, you were right. I am not the box of tomatoes fairies at all. It was all lies, lies, lies!
Italy is technically the main character, known for being silly, cowardly, and mostly useless, but cute. He loves pasta, beautiful women, and is generally a bit lazy. The Italy we see in Hetalia is North Italy, and he has a brother, South Italy, who's generally referred to as Romano. Italy's best friends are Germany and Japan. Italy's personality is naive, and he tends to see the best in others. His most commonly used human name is Feliciano Vargas, though he's sometimes referred to as Veneziano.
We've called this conference to solve the world's problems, not to fight about the problems of our past. And since I'm the only country who seems to know how to run a meeting, we'll follow my rules from here on out. 8 minutes each for speeches, no chit-chatting on side deals, and absolutely no going over the time limit.
Germany is the disciplined, strong, and competent member of the group. Interesting choices there, show. Initially, he finds Italy a bit of a nuisance, but he warms up to him over time. Both the series and the fanbase hint heavily at a romantic connection between them. Germany's human name is Ludwig Beilschmidt.
Konnichiwa, I am Japan. I enjoy sensing the mood and refraining from speaking.
It's true.
Japan is soft-spoken and a little reserved, but he has a ruthless streak.
Look, I'm a big cat. Don't you want to scratch my belly?
You need to seek professional help.
He's somewhat closed off, but curious about other cultures. And for a while he was a hikikomori, aka a recluse. As an otaku, he has a preference for 2D girls. He loves animals and food and has a weakness for cute things. His human name is Kiku Honda.
Suck my balls, you damn potato eater.
Oh boy, it's hug time.
Would you stop it with your hug therapy already?
I'll never understand Catholics.
Romano is Italy's brother, and while he's kinder and more respectful towards women, he's standoffish around men. He's known for being rude and hot-headed, and he has a particular dislike for Germany. Despite being louder and tougher than his brother, he's just as cowardly at heart.
It's France, bro!
Oh no, it's Germany!
Romano's human name is Lovino Vargas. Now for the allies.
And that means I'm the hero!
America is loud, obnoxious, self-centered, and obsessed with being seen as the hero. Yeah, sounds about right. He tends to stick his nose into everyone's business and has a talent for completely missing the vibe of any given situation. And he has an alien friend named Tony.
Don't say Stratic, you limey bastards! Don't think I won't kill you, limey bastards! Limey bastards!
Yes, really. His human name is Alfred F. Jones.
Since you're illiterate and not our leader, mostly my mind wanders while you're speaking. Like recalling how we burnt your capital to the ground in 1814.
England is blunt, quick to anger, and often gets into spats with both France and America. Despite his fiery temperament, he considers himself a proper gentleman. With a history as a pirate, he has some interesting quirks, including an affinity for magic and the ability to see magical creatures, which no one else can. This has led to some thinking that he's a bit unhinged. Most would consider his character archetype to be a tsundere. And to top it off, he's famously terrible at cooking. His human name is Arthur Kirkland.
They had a pretty good time without me. How unfair. Although I can understand why. Still, though, how could they leave this gorgeousness out of the Allies?
France is flirty, flamboyant, and a bit past his prime. Once a powerful nation, now not so much. Known for making blunt, often suggestive remarks towards other characters, he's also famously self-obsessed. His intense rivalry with England is a running theme, with the two arguing over just about anything. Yet, there's an odd dynamic between them, with the show itself hinting at a possible enemies-to-lovers relationship on multiple occasions.
France is a long-time acquaintance he's often found bickering with for bickering's sake. However, in their heart of hearts, they love each other. Sexually.
Where the hell did they get that?
Why are you still that body?
France's human name is Francis Bonnefoy.
Shanti Haoma? Oh, great. Britain, France, and America are fighting again over nothing. Why can't you just dominate your people with a totalitarian government, really? Here, let me show you how things are decided using ancient Chinese fashion. How? Seems simple enough. China take all. You can go home now.
China is one of the oldest characters in the show, often attempting to play the role of a wise older brother, though unfortunately no one really takes him seriously in that regard. He frequently tries to leverage his age and experience to get his way, but usually to no avail. Like Japan, he's passionate about food, though he keeps his recipes a tightly guarded secret. A devoted fan of Hello Kitty and pandas, China is generally cheerful, though he's prone to getting annoyed fairly easily. His human name is Yao Wang.
No, not at all. I'm just happy to watch all of you talk stuff over. It's very nice that everyone let me feel like one of the gang. Besides, I hide dark secret no one will guess because of my sweet face.
Russia is a bit of an enigma. He's tall and intimidating, yet he tries to come across as innocent and sweet. However, despite his best efforts, everyone cowers the moment he so much as smiles. Can't say I blame them. Russia is depicted with a childlike demeanor, but that also comes with a kind of childlike cruelty. showing little empathy or awareness of others' boundaries. He's often described as insane, though not necessarily malicious. His human name is Ivan Braginski.
I'm right here. I wonder if they'll pay attention if I make some noise. One day they'll notice me.
Who are you?
I'm Canada.
Canada is America's often overlooked, shy, and gentle brother. People frequently either don't notice him at all or confuse him with America, which, given their similar appearance, has landed him in some trouble for things he didn't even do.
American Pigman! I'm going to beat your head till I feel better.
Maple Hockey, what are you doing? What makes you think that I'm American?
Because I can smell the hamburgers and arrogance all the way over here.
Unlike his bold brother, Canada dislikes conflict and tries to avoid it whenever possible. His pet bear, Kumajira, also has a habit of forgetting who he is.
That, you know, and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Canada's human name is Matthew Williams. So that was the main characters out of the way, but there's a couple more that I think I should mention.
I shall now show my utter disgust and anger with you through the piano.
Okay, go on.
Austria is well-spoken and often seen as a reliable, serious character, though in reality he tends to prioritize his hobbies over his responsibilities. Despite his refined demeanor, he has a bit of a temper and can come across as somewhat stuck-up.
I am very strict about rules and discipline.
His main interests lie in the fine arts and music, which he is deeply passionate about. Austria and Hungary were once married, though they're no longer together. Still, there are plenty of hints that they continue to care for each other. His human name is Roderich Edelstein.
Jesus God! Why do you have to stress me out like this? I don't know what to do!
Hungary is one of the few female characters with consistent appearances, though she's still more of a secondary character. In her youth, she was a tomboy and even thought she was a boy until puberty hit. Back then, she often beat up Austria until they grew older and she somehow ended up as his servant for a while. We'll get to that later. In short, Hungary is a tough character and is actually considered one of the most manly characters in the series. And she's also apparently a Fujoshi. Her human name is Elisabetta Hidervari.
These stupid anime writers have no idea what they're doing. Germany gets all the screen time, once the jokes that get beeped. I'm awesome Prussia, not some bit player like France.
Prussia is loud, arrogant, and always ready to throw down with anyone who'll take him on. Obsessed with proving that he's the best and strongest, he constantly insists that he's the most awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, buddy. Despite his claims of loving solitude, he secretly craves acknowledgement and admiration. He's kept diaries ever since he was formed, so by now he has quite the library of personal accounts. Prussia is Germany's older brother, and occasionally calls him West. He despises Russia. He also has a pet bird named Gilbert.
Is that a chicken?
Prussia's human name is Gilbert Beilschmidt. There are many more characters, over 60 having been depicted in the official material. But I'm going to leave the character introductions at that. In the next section, I'll be mentioning a couple more that could be deemed as relevant. Hetalia has a habit of portraying characters as family members or having other unique connections, creating some, let's say, unusual family dynamics. A few of these relationships are a bit questionable, and some of these ships are too, due to these connections. Fair warning, this might get a bit confusing. Trust me, I could feel my head spinning as I dug through the official material for this. let's kick this off with some ancestors. Other than China, two of the oldest nations depicted are Germania and ancient Rome. Ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and Persia have also been depicted in the manga, but I'm honestly not as knowledgeable about all of that, and this is long enough as it is. Ancient Rome, or the Roman Empire, is the grandfather of North and South Italy.
For a while, Italy spent his time drawing and singing with his unusually handsome grandfather. Italy had a natural affinity for artistic pursuits, so his grandfather was delighted.
He shares many personality traits with North Italy, and is said to have been killed by Germania, who was once his close friend. Interestingly, after their deaths, they rekindled their friendship in the afterlife. The afterlife concept in Hetalia is a bit odd, as there are a few characters who represent dead nations yet still linger around. Prussia is one example, though the ancient nations like Rome don't make appearances as frequently. Germania was a historical region in north-central Europe associated with the Germanic peoples by Roman authors.
Why don't you talk about something other than women, liquor, and battles for once in your pathetic life?
And is depicted as the grandfather or possibly father of various Germanic countries. He's a grandfather of Prussia, Austria, and Germany. As for family dynamics, Germany and Prussia are brothers, and Austria is their cousin, I think. He's also suggested to have been the father, maybe grandfather, of the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire is another rabbit hole. Let me set the scene for you first. He, as you soon will learn, was a very important part of lore for the fandom. Italy and Romano were at one point children and delegated to the role of servants. Italy was raised by Hungary and Austria, but also served as Austria's, well, servant. For a while, so did Hungary. Adding to the confusion, Austria and Hungary mistook Italy for a girl and dressed him accordingly.
One day, Miss Hungary decided to put her clothes on Italy.
You look so adorable.
Side note, at some point teenage France was also involved in his childhood, being seen as an older brother by the Italies. Eventually though, France became insistent on conquering Italy. During this time, the Holy Roman Empire fell in love with Italy, continuously insisting that Italy become part of him.
He chases me because I'm scared of him.
I would quit if you just come over to my place, so...
Italy found him intimidating, though he showed him kindness.
Control yourself.
And eventually the Holy Roman Empire went off to war, and Italy gave him his broom as a memento.
Here, take this with you. Maybe it will help you think of me. And then you won't forget about me.
In the manga, he gives him something else. Unfortunately, the Holy Roman Empire didn't survive the war. Remember how I mentioned the afterlife? We have dead nations such as ancient Rome, Germania, Prussia, and a few others making appearances posthumously. Holy Roman Empire has not made such appearances.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
Well, what about Romano? Boy, am I glad you asked. Spain, another secondary character, is portrayed as the older brother to both Italy brothers, North and South Italy. He's the oldest of their supposed siblings. North Italy gets along pretty well with Spain, who's laid back and easygoing. However, Spain is given custody, for lack of a better word, of Romano, and their dynamic is complicated.
Romano? So, how are your Spanish lessons coming along?
Spanish is stupid hard to learn because the words are all wrong.
Romano naturally is cold and often mean towards Spain, thinking that he's after his grandfather's inheritance.
Big surprise, huh?
He's probably after Grandpa's inheritance, just like everybody else.
Despite this, Romano secretly cares for Spain, showing his jealousy whenever Spain spends his time with other people. Spoiler alert, Spamano was, or maybe still is, pretty popular. But with Spain being a big brother figure and having practically raised Romano,
Parenting is really hard.
you can see the weirdness of the ship, right? I mean, it's not just me, is it?
That's suspicious. That's weird.
Let me try to explain the FACE family. FACE is an acronym for France, America, Canada, England. So, France and England. Where do I even begin?
No one thinks you're a badass.
They don't? Wow, what must they think of you then after getting pretty much knocked out by Italy the other day?
Their relationship is tumultuous at best.
Everybody knows I've got the biggest...
No one asked you, cheesy monkey!
Shut up, black sheep of yours!
I've told you not to call me that!
They're rivals, always at odds. But when push comes to shove, they'll quickly team up against others. The tension between them is palpable. France is a little older in the canon and often teased England in their youth. Oh, and just to make things more interesting, France tried to marry England at one point. Yeah, I'm not joking. That's like an actual thing.
So, Britain, I have something important to say to you. I would like for you to marry me.
Fast forward a bit, and when America emerged as a young nation, the rivalry reached new heights. France and England fought over who would get custody of him, basically who would raise him. Ultimately, England won that battle and became America's parental figure, and in some cases has been referred to as his older brother.
Then I guess I'll call you Big Brother.
France, though, doesn't let go of the younger brother dynamic entirely, and seems to have a special fondness for America, almost as if he sees him as a younger sibling. Related to that, France also fills the role of an older brother to Monaco and possibly Seychelles, and in the past he was an older brother figure to Italy, but as they grew older their relationship got a little weird. For example, there's that one scene where France tries to explain intercourse to Italy.
Fancy pants? What does sexual act mean?
Oh, you don't even know that? Oh my, how adorable! It's something you do with someone you love. You can just pretend to love them too. Then you get to put their arms.
I don't want to host this show no more.
Back to the FACE family. America grows up and, as we know, gains independence from England. In Hetalia, this moment becomes one of the few somewhat angsty plot points, creating a lasting rift between the two. While they've grown more civil over time, the tension from their past remains. And believe me, the angst factor in the fanbase, it's real. Canada is also part of the FACE family. He was originally under France's care, but eventually England took over. Despite this, Canada has stayed fairly close to France, who's one of the few who can tell him apart from America right away. England, on the other hand, not so much, even though he raised Canada too.
You're not my dad!
I guess I should also mention Sealand, who insists on being a real country and is also England's sibling figure. The official Sealand YouTube has mentioned him. Well, we still have quite a few dynamics to cover, so let's move on.
People ask how I'm doing. Very suicidal.
Much like the dynamic between England and America, China found Japan as a child and took him under his wing, teaching him many things. But as Japan grew up, he eventually turned against China, even going so far as to attack him with a katana, leaving a scar on China's back. Though they became enemies in war after that, China still views Japan as a younger brother. Japan, however, doesn't share the sentiment. Hong Kong was also raised by China initially, but later ended up under Britain's care. Eventually Hong Kong and China were reunited, but China felt that England's influence had changed him. Now, despite showing respect for China, Hong Kong often rebels against him. Korea is a manga-only character. And there's a reason for that. He's a bit obsessed with China, constantly seeking his acknowledgement, and claims to hate Japan. Korea was actually included in promotional material for the first season of the anime, but his character received significant backlash from South Korean citizens for various reasons, ranging from his exaggerated personality, bluffing and perverted, to inaccuracies in his cultural depictions, like his hanbok being drawn incorrectly. Likely in part because of this, he hasn't appeared in the anime series. Taiwan is also featured, being shown to dislike China and prefer Japan over him. This is getting so long.
I'm extremely confused. You're confused? I'm fucking confused, bro.
Okay, let's try to unravel the mess that is the whole Russia circle.
This is Ukraine. When I say big sister, I mean big sister. Apparently her breasts are so giant they make her back hurt. Also, she's poor, so those are real.
Huh? What? Oh. Okay.
Ukraine is known to be Russia's older sister. She apparently wants to stay close with him, but there are complications, like her boss forbidding her from interacting with him. This is aged like milk.
Open this damn door right this instant! You and I are going to get together whether you like it or not! Open up, brother! Let me in! Go away!
Belarus is also Russia's sister, and she has an obsessive love for him, wanting to marry him. Even Russia is a little scared of her. Side note, what is with this show and incest, or like borderline incest, or pseudo-incest? It's like everywhere in this show. Anyway, the Baltics, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia are Russia's subordinates. They're shown living with him in some episodes, all terrified of him, and likely subjected to his abuse. Strangely, Lithuania seems to get the brunt of this, and the series hints at a potential romantic history between them. Despite their obvious fear, Russia insists that they're his friends. For context, many Russians still view the Baltic nations as rebellious regions of Russia, adding an unsettling layer of cultural reality to these dynamics. Lithuania and Poland have been shown to be friends, with Poland standing up for Lithuania against Russia. They were partners in the days of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. The Nordics make occasional appearances, shown to have a kind of brotherly dynamic. Finland and Sweden have a particularly strong bond, with Sweden even referring to Finland as his wife after they escaped Denmark's rule. Speaking of Denmark, he once ruled over Sweden, which caused tension between them that still lingers in their interactions. Norway and Denmark, on the other hand, maintain a close friendship, while Iceland, as the youngest, is seen as a little brother figure by all of them. So, if the past however many minutes has not made it clear yet, I was part of the fandom in its heydays.
Do not cite the deep magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written.
Let's get real here. The Hetalia fandom was huge and loud. I got into it around 2013 or 2014, by which time it was already in full swing. By then, at least the first 4 seasons and the movie, yes, there was a movie, were out. The 5th season was either just getting released or about to drop. Let me set the scene for you. The online fandom spaces of the 2010s were vastly different from what we have today. DeviantArt was the go-to spot for fan art and fanfiction, and Tumblr was hugely popular, bringing fans together in all kinds of ways. Anime itself was only just starting to break into the mainstream. And the official content we were getting for a lot of these shows? Actually wild. Drama CDs with the Japanese voice actors were pretty common, and if you have a favorite anime from that time, it's worth checking out to see if they have any. When it comes to Hetalia, though, the sheer amount of official content is something else entirely. It cannot be understated. Before delving into the additional official materials, I'd like to point out that the anime currently has a movie and 7 seasons, the latest of which was released in 2021. The manga is still ongoing on top of that as well. I mentioned drama CDs. There were 5 main drama CDs, one of which was actually an independent project produced before the anime as a celebration of the comic. Fun fact, some of the CDs were tied to a scrapped Hetalia dating sim project. Yeah, you heard that right, a dating sim. Beyond that, there was the interval drama series with 3 CDs, the Fantasia series with another 3, the W Academy drama series with 2 CDs, plus anime drama CDs, soundtrack CDs, and individual character CDs. In total, if I counted correctly, Hetalia has a whopping 88 CDs of official audio content. Some of these CDs featured character songs, and let me tell you, the Hetalia soundtrack was iconic. The show actually forfeited having a traditional intro, but each episode had an outro. The most beloved outro was, of course, Marukaite Chiku, which was in seasons 1 and 2, sung by Italy's voice actor. If you ever heard the iconic Nene Papa part, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But here's the fun part. There are 17 alternate versions of Marukaite Chiku, performed by different countries, and a few of them even made their way into the anime itself as replacements for the regular outro. That's a lot of Chiku to go around. Okay, iconic outro song aside, I mentioned character songs. What are character songs? According to Wikipedia, an image song or character song is a song on a tie-in single or album, often called an image album or character album, for an anime, game, dorama, manga, or commercial product that is sometimes sung by the voice actor or actor of a character, in character, with harmonies. It is meant to give a sense of the personality of the character. Boy did Hetalia deliver us character songs. Excluding the 18 versions of Marukaite Chiku, 18 versions of Hatafutte Parade, 10 versions of Mawaru Chiku Rondo, 5 versions of Hetalian Jet, and 1 version of Chiku Marugoto Hag Shitainda, there should be 80 Hetalia songs. No, I'm not 100% certain, but I did my damn best to count them correctly. I used numbered lists and excluded the outro songs, so I hope I'm correct. Let me list off some of my favorites in no particular order. Pub and Go, England character song, Einsam Kite, Germany, absolutely invincible British gentleman, Fall in Love, Mademoiselle, France, Winter, Russia, Light My Heart, Russia, and Excuse Me, I'm Sorry, Japan. I mentioned this in the earlier segment, a Hetalia dating sim. This was an unfinished project by the author with a demo released in 2007. In that universe, the countries are high school students in a multicultural school. This is a plot idea that occasionally surfaces in the comic and even the anime. The player character is Seashells, a new transfer student in the school. The characters are still countries, and the lore is something about all nations have to attend the school at least once. So, when Seashells gets to the school, England clamps a dog collar on her and declares her his new colony. She must do everything he says, as he's the student council president.
Do you know you have 30 minutes? 30, yes.
France, in this canon, raised Seashells, or partially raised her. While there isn't much content available from the demo, a few notable bad endings are known. In one of them, France frees the player from England and claims her as his own. He then leads her back to his place for a party, commenting on how innocent she is before locking the door behind them. I don't like this.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
This demo was thankfully never completed in its original form. However, in 2011, a version of the game was released for the PSP. That version is marketed more as an adventure game and seems to have less weird content. Hasn't been officially translated, I don't think, and finding specifics on the contents is a bit difficult. There might be some fan-translated versions or YouTube playthroughs. I'm not entirely sure about that. The player character is still the transfer student Seashells. This time she must help plan a party for the school while getting to know her peers. Hetalia refers to the gender-bent versions of the canon characters. The term was coined by the Japanese fanbase and is derived from the word Neotaika, which is a term for a male character that was transformed into a female. Himaruya has created several designs for the gender-bent versions, and they have even featured in the Hetalia comic strips as well as the anime.
Whoa, what the? Why am I a rice ball?
In-universe, the characters also exist in the form of mochi nations, adorable mochi-like versions of themselves. Mochi are Japanese rice cakes known for their chewy texture, and I happen to be a fan of them. They're pretty good. These mochi counterparts share recognizable features with their human versions, but are typically round, white, and highly simplified. They can morph their shape, sprout tiny appendages, and even display miniature flags representing their respective nations. The Mochi Hetalia characters served as mascots for Himaruya's Kitayume website, and appeared in short segments in Hetalia The Beautiful World episodes.
Ciao friends, just call me Italy Cat.
Much like the Mochi counterparts, Hetalia reimagines the nations as cats. These feline versions share designs and personality traits with their human counterparts, making them instantly recognizable. True to the theme, each cat is referred to by their nation's name with the suffix cat added. For example, America cat or Japan cat. There's a musical? Yes, my darlings, there's a musical. In fact, there isn't just a musical. There are 7. That's right, 7 full musicals based on Hetalia. Let me list them off real quick. Hetalia, Singing in the World, performed in 2015. Hetalia, The Great World, performed in 2016. Hetalia, In the New World, performed in 2017. Hetalia, A World in the Universe, performed in 2018. Hetalia, The World is Wonderful, performed in 2021. Hetalia, The Fantastic World, performed in 2023. And Hetalia, The Glorious World, performed in 2024. Yes, in addition to the latest season having been released in 2021, the latest musical was performed this year, Crazy, huh? These musicals are a little difficult to track down. DVDs of the older productions are no longer being sold, and while a couple of the newer ones are available on the Japanese streaming site Unext, finding versions with translated subtitles is an even bigger challenge. Thankfully, there are some dedicated fans working on creating fan-subbed files to make the musicals more accessible to non-Japanese speakers. What stands out most in these musicals are the costuming and the vocals, which really shine in the higher quality recordings. It is fascinating that Hetalia has inspired this many full-length stage musicals. I think it really goes to show just how popular Hetalia was, both in Japan and worldwide. Where to begin? Let's start simple. What was so alluring about this piece of media? Well, unlike most shows, Hetalia doesn't have much of a plot. It's very simple in its essence, with each episode lasting only about 5 minutes. I believe that the lack of a structured plot actually helped fuel its growth. The characters are over the top and fairly simple, which made them instantly recognizable. The short episode length also made it easy to share online, allowing the show to spread quickly. It was accessible. You didn't need to watch every single episode to understand the dynamics between the characters. This made it easy for new viewers to jump in without feeling overwhelmed. The characters in Hetalia are so versatile that they can easily be placed into any scenario, and their dynamics would still remain intact. The official media itself supports this with the existence of various alternate universes, such as high school AUs, gender-bent AUs, cat AUs, and even gangster AUs. But it didn't stop there. Fans took this concept even further and created their own unique AUs. We'll touch on some of the more famous and infamous ones later. In addition to these fun, imaginative takes, the dynamics between characters also left plenty of room for deeper exploration. Despite the show being primarily comedic, a large amount of fan content began to introduce strong emotional and angsty themes, adding complexity and depth to the already established relationships. America's independence, for example, was a plot point that a lot of fans used as a starting point. There was so much fan art, so much fan fiction. The many wars and historical events our world has been through all could be used as something to latch onto. I will also give the Hetalia fandom this. They were incredibly dedicated and created a staggering amount of impressive content. A lot of this can be attributed to the way fandoms were back then. It's not to say that fans today don't create animatics, fan art, and fanfiction, quite the opposite, in fact. But the sheer volume of content and the level of work poured into it back in the Hetalia heyday was something else. I was pretty new to fandoms at the time, around 11 or 12 myself. Hetalia was definitely one of the first fandoms of that scale that I discovered, and the enthusiasm and creativity that came with it were absolutely overwhelming in the best way. The fandom was, admittedly, also pretty wild. The show and comics themselves often hinted at relationships between characters in a joking manner, and fans ran with it. Shipping characters was very rampant. So were ship wars. Now, shipping is generally not a bad thing, despite what some anime dude bros might try to tell you these days. The fans of Hetalia were mostly young people, and a significant portion of us were assigned female at birth. Many of us were also queer, or at least eventually discovered that we were as the fandom evolved. It's one of those things that feels like a rite of passage. Hetalia brought together so many people who felt seen, even in its more chaotic and sometimes problematic elements. Hetalia had a large cast of characters with plenty of different ships to choose from. Some of them, looking back, are admittedly quite weird. Some of them have questionable implications. So let's try and list off some of the most popular ships back then. Having done a little digging into what remains of the fandom, I'll also mention if something has decreased or increased in popularity since then. From what I saw, one of the biggest points of disagreement within the fandom was the Fruk versus Usuk debate. That is to say, France and England versus America and England. P.S. Very hard to find image credits for old fan art. A lot of them have been reposted with no credit on countless websites, but I did all I could to try and find the original creators where possible. Let's start with Fruk, which gained popularity thanks to the classic enemies to lovers trope they could easily embody. They have a long history of rivalry and tension, mixed with moments of genuine connection and reluctant teamwork, which makes the ship work well for fans of more complex, historic relationships. Plus, there are quite a few references in the canon that hint at this dynamic, giving fans plenty of fuel. Personally, I have a soft spot for Fruk and give it the Adri stamp of approval. Now, moving on to Usuk, which was the pairing between England and America. Back in the day, fans would actually debate over whether it should be Usuk or UK-US based on who was topping. Yeah, that was a big deal back then. A lot of slash ship names from the 2000s to 2010s fandom spaces put the name of the character who tops first when mashing together names. Look, I'm not here to be harsh or mean-spirited. Technically, both America and England are adults in the canon, and they're not biologically related. But personally, I still find the ship a bit weird. England raised America from childhood, so shifting that dynamic to a romantic one has always felt a bit off to me. That being said, the majority of the fanbase was young and probably didn't think too deeply about the implications at the time, and in fandom spaces, critical thinking around ship dynamics wasn't as common, and it's important not to assign too much moral judgment looking back. Plus, given Hetalia's episodic format, their relationship didn't always come off as fully brotherly in every single episode, so there was room for interpretation. I would also like to remind you all that I did do my best to credit all the artists, but if you have personal issues with these ships, please don't harass anyone shown. This ship is not quite as popular as it once was, probably due to what I already mentioned. I will say, on the AO3 tag, it still dominates over France and England, but going through recent fan art on Tumblr, it seems to have become more rare. Germany and Italy was, and still is, one of the most beloved ships in the Hetalia fandom. In fact, I'd argue it's one of the few pairings that feels semi-canon. Let me put on my Jer-Ita truther hat for a moment here. The show's plot kicks off with Germany finding the somewhat wimpy Italy, who continually shows up to become Germany's prisoner. Despite Germany's gruff demeanor and occasional exasperation with Italy, their dynamic quickly shifts into an unlikely alliance and even friendship. Germany, for all his strictness, genuinely seems to care for Italy, and there are moments where that care feels romantic. This ship mostly avoided the usual ship war chaos, likely because it felt so organic. It also gave fans an opportunity to embrace the Holy Roman Empire theory. Historically, the Holy Roman Empire had ties to Germany, and their similar designs in the series have made fans speculate that Germany could be a reincarnation of the Holy Roman Empire. This theory, combined with Italy's childhood romance with the Holy Roman Empire, provided fans with endless bittersweet angsty material. I have to admit, part of me buys into the Holy Roman Empire-Germany connection, and I'm here for it. This ship gets an Adri stamp of approval. While not super popular, Itapan, Italy x Japan, was still somewhat enjoyed by the fanbase. I find it a pretty cute pairing, personally. Italy, with his boundless affection, definitely has both Germany and Japan wrapped around his little finger. He knows exactly what he's doing.
Italy, would you like some chocolate?
Yeah.
Would you like delicious canned macaron?
Yeah.
Yamato ni beef is delicious too.
Grazie.
Italy and Japan are shown to have a generally positive relationship, and for fans who enjoyed their softer, more introspective moments together, this ship had its appeal. In the same vein, Itapan, Germany x Italy x Japan, also had its share of fans. Italy often acts as the glue holding the Axis trio together, balancing out Germany's intensity and Japan's reserved nature. Their dynamic worked well, and fans who loved the interplay between these three characters found plenty of ways to explore it romantically. So, yes, Adri's stamp of approval, I guess? This one was very popular. Rus Ame or Ame Rus, depending on who you ask. There are other names, but we're not diving into all of them. Also encapsulates the iconic dynamic of rivals or enemies to lovers. With such a rich historical backdrop, it's no surprise this pairing captured the imagination of many fans. America is also one of the few characters who is not that afraid of Russia. The Cold War and space race were particularly beloved themes for their relationship. That's not to say there weren't people who disliked this, as the version of Russia often depicted in this pairing is Soviet Russia in his uniform, which was sometimes seen as insensitive. Canonically, Russia also abused the Baltics and Prussia, who are America's friends. But I don't know, I kind of like this pairing. Like, I see the appeal, and I don't mind it existing. And I've seen some pretty cool fan content for it, I guess. Rochu is the commonly used ship name for the pairing of China and Russia, derived from a portmanteau of their Japanese pronunciations. Sometimes referred to as the red pairing due to the dominant color of their flags and their shared political histories. Russia was often depicted as stalking China, sometimes dressed in a panda suit, and persistently urging him to become one with him, reflecting his obsessive and overbearing tendencies. China seems to be more wary of him. Over the years, the ship seems to have lost some of its popularity in favor of Rusame. Asakiku, the ship name for England and Japan, a portmanteau of their human names Arthur and Kiku, was a fairly common pairing within the fandom. While it didn't reach the same popularity as Fruk or Usuk, it still had a dedicated fanbase. Both being island nations, England and Japan share a unique dynamic, with England often showing more tolerance towards Japan than he does towards America or France. Interestingly, Japan is portrayed as being surprisingly comfortable with seeing England half nude after a bath, a scene that highlights the contrast to his more uncomfortable reactions when faced with Italy and Germany in similar situations. For historical context, the Anglo-Japanese alliance is used as material for the ship. Lithuania and Poland, another surprisingly popular ship. This one is the relationship between Poland and Lithuania. This one is by many considered semi-canon too. They had an alliance, and the show itself showcases moments that could hint towards potential feelings between them. Poland is definitely the more bossy figure out of the two, but has moments of standing up for Lithuania, such as against Russia. Might as well mention this here. Lithuania is implied to have a crush on Belarus in canon, so there's been some traction around that ship too.
I'm so excited. You're going to have a wonderful time. One more day and no more Russia for me.
You too. I need my little Lithuania to come with me to Germany.
Please, no, I don't want to go because Germany looks like he's got a bad temper and I'm very small.
And Russia. Lithuania and Russia is a ship too. Obviously pretty toxic in canon, but I'm not gonna hop on the hate train of a ship based on toxicity, because that can sometimes make a fictional story interesting. I'm a Lolite truther, so, I mean... Prukan. This is an odd one because Canada and Prussia do not actually interact much in canon. I believe the only canonical interaction is the event where Prussia hacked the author's page Kitayume and made it his blog for April Fools in 2009, When mentioning Canada, he actually differentiates him from America. Small wins for our Blorbo. The two characters are both pretty lonely, and somehow this pairing occurred. This isn't that weird for the fandom. Some characters get barely any screen time, and many haven't even shown up in the anime. There are ships where the two characters have never even met. Oh, see the curl in Canada's hair? You might have noticed similar ones on other characters, like the Italies and Rome. Some characters also sport prominent cowlicks, such as America and Austria. For quite some time, a significant portion of the fanbase interpreted these curls as erogenous zones. Yes, you heard that right. This idea became somewhat of a running gag within fandom circles, often played up for humor in fan-created content. Also about Prukan, I quite like this pair. It's kinda cute. Let me also list a couple ships that might be worth mentioning. Aus-Hun, Austria and Hungary, which is actually canon, one of the few het ships that was popular. Germania and Rome, the two old critters. Angst potential there with Germania having supposedly killed Rome, but then reuniting as friends. And Sufin, Sweden and Finland, which is semi-canon because of implied mutual feelings. It was pretty popular despite how little the Nordics show up in the anime itself. Let's talk a bit about weird ships, because there were a couple. Spamano is somewhat considered canon. That is the ship between Spain and Romano.
That's a child!
It was very, very popular. I personally can't get behind it because, as I mentioned, Spain raised Romano, and it's getting weirdly close to some territories I'm not super comfy with. There's a comic strip of Spain proposing and Romano accepting. American is America and Canada, and this one is genuinely incestuous. I'm not vibing with it. They don't even interact that much in canon, so shipping them feels like just wanting to ship siblings. Some people also ship the Italy brothers and Prussia and Germany, who are also siblings, and there was definitely some Belarus and Russia, who are also siblings. Looking at the wiki for different ships, they have this little table there that even that lists different things, like what type it is it like gay or straight, is it canon, do they interact in canon, how popular it was, and it has a little segment there to indicate whether a ship is incestuous or not. That's how many incest ships there were. It was like prominent enough to be featured like this. Oh boy, that was a lot. And like, I swear, this is just barely the tip of the iceberg. Ships were the bread and butter of this fandom, but I cannot, in good faith, make you sit through an hour of this. So, how about we move on to something less monotonous? Let's start with something that used to be, or to an extent still is, quite popular among the Hetalia fanbase. The concept of 2P characters, often called second player characters. What are 2P characters? I'm glad you asked. Originally referred to as Another Color by Himaruya, these were essentially recolors or redesigns of the existing characters. While Himaruya never provided these characters with canon personalities or names, he mentioned that he drew them while imagining them as members of an evil organization. To put it simply, 2P characters are often interpreted as evil or dark counterparts of the original Hetalia cast. Fans took this concept and ran with it, creating distinct personas, backstories, and relationships for these alternate versions. Only the Axis trio have received finalized designs from Himaruya himself. These versions were used to tell darker stories and were often violent and or obsessive. They were an interesting mirror image of the lighthearted and fun media that Hetalia was most of the time. Moment of vulnerability here. I really liked these back in the day. The amount of fan art and fanfics I would consume of them was embarrassing. I was certainly a certified edgy kid. Okay, so Italy was characterized as bossy, violent, sadistic, and manipulative, sort of like a mob boss figure, and fans gave him the name Luciano from Lucky Luciano. Germany was usually called Lutz. He was sort of Italy's dog, doing whatever he wanted, and sloppy and lazy. And he has scars that were speculated to be from Italy. Japan was called Kuro, and was cold, calculated, and ruthless. Romano was called Flavio. He was cheerful and friendly, and less cowardly, but he could be manipulative, sassy, violent, and angry. America was called Alan, and he was sort of a delinquent bad boy, and sometimes fans characterized him as being like softer underneath. England was called Oliver, and he was characterized as being bubbly but violent, and liked baking cupcakes that were poisoned and making tea that was poisoned. France was called Francois, and he was just sort of depressed and edgy and smoked. Canada was called Matt, and he was this sort of gruff, manly, asocial lumberjack dude. Russia was called Victor, and was this sort of serious, silent, and judgmental type. China was called Zhao. He was sort of a tsundere, hated cute things, was strategic and a bit paranoid, and a loner. There was a lot more room to work with these characters, creating alternatives for pre-existing ones and giving them their own lore, names, relationships, etc. Some fans even created 3P players for fun. The main webcomic has had moments of the characters being gang members, because Hetalia is just insane like that. And to a degree, I feel like the 2P idea was explored there. It isn't quite the same, but it does feel reminiscent. While only the Axis trio has finalized designs, Himaruya also did a bunch of designs for the Neo versions, which are colored. And I think some elements were definitely borrowed from the Neo designs for the fanon designs of the other 2Ps. Again, this was like really popular, and not every character had a design, so you could like design your own and make up your own lore. Again, like nothing about them was canon other than they were just sort of darker versions of these characters. So it was very sort of do whatever you want, fun playground for fans. The cardverse came from the Hetalia Arte Stella art book, in which Himaruya had drawn these little chibi designs for poker chips that included elements of playing cards, and the fans just ran with it. Before diving fully into this, I'll admit that I wasn't super invested in this AU myself back then. I'd see it pop up here and there, mostly through fan art, but never really delved into it. That said, I knew it was a significant part of the fandom, so I did some digging for this. I want my yapping to be as informative as possible for all you curious souls out there. In this AU, sometimes referred to as Cartalia, the world is divided into 4 kingdoms, corresponding to the 4 card suits: hearts, spades, diamonds, and clubs. The only canon elements of this AU are the roles that the characters hold within each suit. These positions are divided as follows: spades, King, America; Queen, England; Jack, China; diamonds, King France, Queen Liechtenstein, Jack Switzerland. Hearts, King Germany, Queen Japan, Jack Italy. Clubs, King Russia, Queen Hungary, Jack Austria. And there were the jokers, which were Prussia and Sealand. The royal titles like King and Queen are gender-neutral political positions rather than roles tied to a character's gender. For instance, a male character can hold the title of a queen, and a female character can be designated as king. These roles reflect their standing and authority within the suits rather than adhering to traditional definitions of monarchy. There are also no requirements for the king and queen to be married, though in some fan interpretations they may be portrayed as romantic or political partners. The focus remains on their influence and duties within their respective kingdoms rather than any personal relationships. The king typically oversees the military, ensuring the kingdom's defense and leading its armies, while the queen manages the navy and finances, handling trade, wealth distribution, and maritime security. These roles emphasize the balance of power within each kingdom. Aces occasionally appear in fan interpretations, portrayed as secretive and powerful figures. Their identities are often hidden from everyone except the monarchs of their suit. They may serve as spies, assassins, or special operatives, adding a layer of intrigue to the political and military dynamics. Stories in this AU frequently involve wars and conflicts between the kingdoms, with alliances and rivalries shaping the narrative. One of the most commonly agreed upon dynamics is the ongoing tension and conflict between the spades and clubs, often depicted as the most tumultuous relationship among the suits. This backdrop provides a fertile ground for drama, strategy, and character interactions. This AU loved Usuk, especially as America was the king of spades and England his queen. The other royal pairs were occasionally treated as being married, sometimes it was arranged, but this specific ship was very popular. There was also quite a lot of angst in this AU, sometimes surrounding the relationships between monarchs, and sometimes the monarchs and others. Hungary and Austria's relationship has been used as a point of angst, with Hungary being the queen and Austria being the jack, and they have this forbidden love thing going on. It was certainly very popular, and when you look for content, you will find quite a lot of good fan art and a lot of fanfics. It was everywhere. There was also Fandom Stuck, which is a parody of Homestuck, another infamous webcomic, and Hetalia, and other fandoms. The characters in the AU are personified versions of fandoms. There's no official canon, but fans have come up with lots of different bits of lore. Many fandoms were included in the lineup, but I personally saw a lot of content about the Hetalia and Homestuck fandom interacting. This was the peak of Super Hulock fandom era, a time characterized by the infamous Dashcon, quirky internet culture, and a strong sense of community among the weird kids from various fandoms. The Fandom Stuck AU was a product of this time, and still retains a niche following. Some newer fandoms have even inspired creators to continue adding characters to this AU, keeping it alive and evolving. While Tumblr may not hold the same cultural dominance it once did, it remains a hub for talented artists and writers who actively engage in these creative cross-fandom projects, proving that the spirit of collaboration and fandom creativity persists. High school AUs remain a staple of fandom culture even to this day. The concept is straightforward. Take the characters from your favorite media and reimagine them as students or sometimes staff in a high school setting, trading their usual roles for the typical dramas and antics of school life. In the case of Hetalia, this concept blurs the lines between AU and canon, as the show and comics themselves have explored high school scenarios on multiple occasions. These episodes gave fans a foundation to build on, making the high school setting feel like a natural extension of the series. Compared to more elaborate concepts like the Cardverse or Fandom Stuck, the high school AU is much more grounded. However, it was immensely popular, especially in fanfiction, where the familiar dynamics of Hetalia's characters could play out in relatable and modern settings. It's a timeless trope that allows for endless creativity while being relatable to young fans. I must remind you all once again that the Hetalia fandom was massive, bringing together creative individuals from all around the globe who poured their hearts into producing unique content inspired by the series. One particularly notable trend within the fandom was the creation of fan-made games featuring the characters. During this time, RPG games were thriving, and with the relatively easy accessibility of various RPG Maker versions, fans had the perfect tools to bring their ideas to life. The world was truly their oyster. A part of me longs for the days of this era. This is something you don't really see in fandoms anymore. To the veterans of the fandom, this may have triggered some fight-or-flight instincts again. My sincerest apologies. I'd like to begin this section by discussing what is, without a doubt, the most popular fan game of the franchise. This particular game captured the hearts of countless fans with its array of unexpected plot twists, emotionally charged character interactions, and a beautifully crafted soundtrack. Hetalia takes its inspiration from another well-known RPG horror game franchise, Ao Oni. Created by No Props in 2008, Ao Oni quickly gained popularity in Japan and beyond. The franchise has since expanded into light novels, manga, and even live-action adaptations, cementing its place as a classic in the RPG horror genre. Hetalia was created by a Japanese developer going by the handle Tomoyoshi, and was released in segments. The game was sadly discontinued in 2011 after the release of version 17. So, what was Hetalia about? Sticking to the basic premise of Ao Oni, Hetalia follows the Axis powers, plus Prussia, as they come across a supposedly haunted mansion after a world meeting. Curiosity gets the better of them, and they decide to explore. After investigating a broken plate, Japan returns to find the others missing. Before long, the Allies also stumble upon the mansion and find themselves locked inside as well. The story unfolds with the group repeatedly reuniting and separating while a terrifying monster relentlessly chases after them. Tension builds as they attempt to unravel the mysteries of the mansion and survive its horrors. Italy is carrying a journal with him, and as the story unfolds, it is gradually revealed that he has been trapped in a time loop for an untold period. Each loop ends in tragedy, with Italy as the sole survivor, haunted by his inability to save his friends. The journal becomes a key element in the narrative, helping him travel back in time in his repeated attempts to change the outcome and prevent the deaths of those he holds dear. Despite his best efforts, the cycle continues, layering the story with an atmosphere of despair and relentless determination. In February 2012, Piano Dream and Neo Kaino on DeviantArt began translating Hetalia into a playable English version. However, due to the unfinished nature of the original game, they too left their translation incomplete, stating that they had no intention of creating their own ending. Due to this, they were unfortunately met with significant backlash from the fandom, leading to harassment that ultimately drove them offline. As a result, the game files were taken down, although they have since been recovered. It's a stark reminder of the toxicity that can sometimes arise within fan communities, and it is unfortunate that these fans who simply wanted to share the game faced such treatment. In February 2013, Tiger Girl 7707 started her own version of Hetalia, intending to write a complete ending for the game. A playable demo covering up to just past Chapter 5 was released in 2014. However, there have been no updates from her since 2016.
This week, a hot new bombshell enters the villa. Don't call me up, I'm going out tonight.
In August 2016, a creator known as Cookie announced plans for their own version, reportedly with permission from Hetalia creator Tomoyoshi. By December of that year, Cookie released a completed game with a fan-made ending. Shortly afterward, they left the fandom, only to later announce plans for a sequel. As recently as 2023, they revealed intentions to remake the game, showing the enduring appeal and passion for Hetalia within the community. The game was deeply beloved by the Hetalia fanbase, sparking a wave of creativity that led to countless fan works, including fan art, animations, edits, comics, cosplay, and more. Its impact even extended to inspiring adaptations featuring 2P Hetalia characters. One notable version was created by Italy Pasta Love, which used the 2P characters in a unique take on Hetalia. Another adaptation was made by Star Power 9000, based on the 2P Hetalia comic by One Random Name Indeed. This comic diverged significantly from the original Hetalia story, but provided inspiration for the Italy Pasta Love version as well. Unfortunately, both adaptations remain unfinished, adding to the long history of incomplete projects surrounding Hetalia. Dreamtalia is another fairly popular Hetalia RPG fangame created by Kyokyo866, known for her Hetalia playthroughs, and Piano Dream, the original translator of Hetalia. The game is reportedly based on a Jur-Ita roleplay between Kyo and her friend. In the story, a creature called Fosherev, also known as the Dream Reaper, has taken over Italy's mind. The remaining Axis and allies must join forces to exorcise the demon from Italy's mind. Our villain can create fake dream worlds, and if you die in a dream, you die in real life. Arcana versions of the characters show up within the dream world. The complete game consists of many chapters and takes over 20 hours to complete. Additionally, there is an epilogue. The creator is also in the progress of making a sequel. There are still plenty of games available for download through DeviantArt and Tumblr, with wikis dedicated to compiling many of them. While some are incomplete, many are fully completed with original music and art. If you're curious, I'd highly recommend checking out the Hetalia Fangames wiki, or Hetalia Games Wiki, for a comprehensive list. Exploring the Heta Game tag on Tumblr or DeviantArt can also lead you to some fun examples. While RPG Maker games were the most popular format, there are also numerous visual novels, including, you guessed it, dating sims. And yes, some of those are rated 18+. What on earth is an Ask blog, I hear you ask, my young mochilings? Let me enlighten you. An Ask blog, typically hosted on Tumblr, though there were certainly some on DeviantArt, is a blog where users respond to questions, often while role-playing as a character or characters. In fandom spaces, this meant embodying a character and answering questions in character. These responses were frequently paired with art created by the blog's owner or other visual elements. Some Ask blogs even included cosplay photos or videos of the cosplayer answering questions in character, adding an extra layer of immersion and creativity. This was not something that was only seen in the Hetalia fandom. For a period in the 2010s, most fandoms had different Ask blogs. I vividly remember seeing creepypasta and even South Park Ask blogs back in the day. One that I quite enjoyed was the Ask APH Fruk blog on Tumblr. This blog would answer questions as either England or France, often featuring both. In the lore of this blog, they are usually a couple. The creator of this blog has a very unique art style and has even done art for the Cardverse AU. There were also many Ask blogs for 2P Hetalia. One of them was Ask 2P England. They have since deactivated, but I fondly remember seeing a lot of their content. Sadly, many of the Ask blogs from that time have been deleted, taking with them a treasure trove of creative art and cosplay. Most lists that once catalogued these blogs now lead to empty pages or dead links. It feels bittersweet, like walking through the preserved ruins of Pompeii, a snapshot of a once vibrant community now frozen in time and slowly fading away. Hetalia cosplayers were a significant part of the fan base. In the 2010s, it was fairly common for cosplay groups to come together and host panels at conventions, where they would answer questions live while staying in character. These panels were often lively and interactive, showcasing the creativity and dedication of the fandom.
Good. Well, he's kind of like my mother, so that's like, no. He's like my dad. First off, even if he wasn't my dad, hell no.
There were also cosplayers who filmed skits in cosplay.
A moose. Okay, a moose, and
What's wrong with this moose? There has to be some sort of psychological infliction. He's a drunk. He's a drunk. He's a drunk moose. Okay, drunk moose.
I have some good memories of these creators and would rewatch some of them many times.
What about you? It depends which part. But yeah, I was assuming it was the north when I wrote it, so yeah. I'd be down.
You'd fuck Italy?
Well, yes.
Okay.
It reminds me of someone.
While many of these videos were low resolution and lacked stellar lighting, they captured the spirit of fun and creativity that brought cosplayers and fans together. Watching them was often as enjoyable as participating, and they became cherished memories for many in the fandom. Unfortunately, with the rise of cringe culture, fandom spaces like these became less vibrant and playful, losing some of their unique charm. In addition to panels, there were also some, for the time, stellar cosplay music videos, CMVs, which were not unique to the Hetalia fandom, but held a special place within it. These CMVs showcased incredible creativity, and many fans, including myself, found joy in them. As someone who didn't have real-life friends who shared my love for cringe media or access to cosplay materials, I lived vicariously through the hard work and passion of other fans. Their dedication was inspiring, and a source of connection in an otherwise isolated experience.
Be extinct, so don't mess with me. I'll shoot you down, don't mess with me.
Creating animations and animatics was, and still is, a beloved activity within fandoms. This is one tradition that has remained pretty consistent over the years. Even today, fans continue to craft these visual stories for various media, bringing characters and scenes to life in unique ways. In the Hetalia fandom, there were countless creative and often comedic animations and animatics produced by both the English-speaking and Japanese fanbase. In the early days of fandom, flash animations were pretty popular. Often these were short, comedic, and fairly simple in style.
Did you hear the Swiss troops accidentally invaded a neighbouring country of Liechtenstein? That really happened. Did you read the headlines? Switzerland invaded... Yeah. I don't know how you quite understand how you could... I don't know how you could invade somebody by accident.
That being said, there were also creators who poured lots of effort into creating more complex and impressive animations. A lot of these were posted on Nico Video, a Japanese video sharing platform, which were then often reposted onto other websites by fans. There's even some people still making animatics for the Hetalia fandom.
A little louder! Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, they vote, oh yes, they vote, oh yes, they vote.
Oh yeah.
The gun, the gun, the gun, the gun, oh yes, they vote, he's for the gun. Now you got it!
I was always deeply impressed by animations like these. As a kid who loved art and once dreamed of becoming an animator, I was captivated by the idea of creating something like this myself. Of course, my skills and resources were pretty limited at the time. I hadn't even gotten my first drawing tablet yet. But I truly believe that seeing all this creativity within the fandom, Hetalia and other fandoms, inspired me to keep pursuing my own artistic endeavors. Some of you might not be familiar with Miku Miku Dance, commonly abbreviated as MMD. It's a freeware animation program that lets users import models and animate them with relative ease. Originally created for the Vocaloid Hatsune Miku as part of the Vocaloid promotion video project, MMD was first released in 2008 and has seen significant updates since its initial launch. You could download a variety of models, which were typically shared on platforms like DeviantArt and Nico Video. And obviously, you could also make your own. There were also plenty of background options and props and so on and so forth. While creating your own animations was certainly an option, it was also quite common to download pre-made animations, known as motion data, and apply them to your models. In a way, this was similar to creating animation memes. Despite using pre-made motions, a significant amount of effort and editing often went into customizing and enhancing these projects, resulting in some truly impressive work. Back to something that remains pretty common in fandoms: edits. These are especially popular on platforms like TikTok. Interestingly, a lot of what's now referred to as edits would have probably been called anime music videos back in the day, particularly if they exclusively used footage from the show itself. A lot of actual edits from this time period used fan art and occasionally official art as well. The editing could be quite impressive and skilled. However, it was very common for editors to use fan art without crediting the artists it was made by. It was also fairly common to see MEPs, multiple editors projects, which were collaborative works. Each editor was assigned a snippet of a song and usually a cohesive theme. Doujins, often referred to as doujins, are self-published works typically created by fans of existing media. While they often include erotic content, they aren't exclusively so. Plenty of doujins explore non-romantic, fluffy, or purely comedic themes, showcasing a wide range of creative storytelling and artistic styles. Lots of these, too, have been lost to time, with some being reposted on Tumblr blogs and lists on DeviantArt. It was definitely a bit easier finding these back in the day, with many websites hosting both fanworks and original doujins. As with any large fandom, Hetalia fans were naturally drawn to writing their own fanfiction, a timeless staple of fandom culture that persists to this day. Fanfiction provided a creative outlet for fans to explore character dynamics, alternate universes, and their own personal takes on the series. While Archive of Our Own is the go-to platform for fanfiction today, this wasn't always the case. AO3, founded in 2008, was certainly utilized during Hetalia's peak, but there were many other platforms where fans shared their works. One of these platforms is the infamous fanfiction.net, a hell site in its own peculiar way. While it offers some search functions, navigating is far less pleasant than AO3, and its popularity has waned considerably over the years. However, during Hetalia's heyday, it was a major hub for fanfiction. Another platform that retains a relatively active user base is Wattpad. While Wattpad is often associated with questionable writing and overused tropes, it has also become a hub for young aspiring writers. While not specifically designed for fanworks, it offers an accessible platform for sharing stories, including Hetalia fanfiction. One platform I particularly enjoyed back in the day was Quotive. While not as well known today, it was widely popular during the 2010s. Quotive allowed users to create quizzes and write stories, many of which were fanfictions. It also had community features like messaging and forming groups, making it an excellent place to connect with others who shared similar interests. Sadly, these social features have been removed in recent years, which is a shame. I have fond memories of the site, especially since I met one of my oldest friends there. Tumblr was another key platform for Hetalia fans. While primarily used for sharing headcanons, fan art, and meta posts, it also became a space for fanfiction. Many of these posts, and similar ones on Wattpad and Quotive, belong to the infamous X-Reader genre. While these fanfics often have a reputation for being cringy, they provided young, lonely fans with a way to feel connected and seen. There was something deeply comforting about coming home from a tough, possibly lonely day at school, and opening your favorite site to read about your favorite characters fawning over you. It gave a sense of belonging that was invaluable, especially for those who might have felt isolated in their real lives. These fan spaces weren't just about creativity. They were about community. Speaking of fandom creativity, this is also a good time to briefly mention the Hetalia creepypasta. As the 2010s were the golden age of creepypasta, Hetalia, being as massive as it was, naturally had its own contribution to the genre. Enter episode 23.5, a lost episode creepypasta that circulated widely in fandom spaces. The story is set during an arc of the show where the Axis powers are stranded on a beach. According to the creepypasta, this supposed lost episode could only be found on a bootleg DVD entirely in Japanese and mysteriously lacking subtitles. The plot follows the nations as they grow hungrier, with Germany and Japan becoming increasingly despondent. Long story short, Japan and Germany end up drowning a sleeping Italy during the night and resorting to cannibalism. Like many creepypastas of the era, it leaned heavily into classic tropes, gratuitous gore, unsettling atmosphere, and of course, hyper-realistic blood. While it wasn't particularly well written, it did attempt to incorporate elements of characterization and angst to make the premise somewhat believable within the Hetalia universe. It's a fascinating relic of that time, reflecting the darker and more experimental corners of fandom creativity. I've spent the whole video speaking about Hetalia and its fandom in a pretty positive and fond light. But I don't want to be dishonest just because I have good memories of this era. I can't ignore the metaphorical elephant in the room. This space was not always perfect, not always sweet, and neither was the media itself. I think it's only fair to begin by addressing some of the more problematic elements of the anime and manga itself. The anime begins with a backdrop of World War II, focusing on the Axis powers, including Germany. However, both the manga and anime tend to avoid delving into darker topics, and as a result, many things you might expect to at least be mentioned are left unaddressed. No character is directly villainized, which I can understand given that these are embodiments of nations rather than representations of the actions of their people. While most of the show doesn't take place during World War II, the fact that Nazi Germany is mostly unaddressed can feel a bit like erasing the heinous crimes of the past. This omission can make it seem as though the darker aspects of history are being overlooked or ignored, which can be unsettling for some viewers. There's also the issue of Germany being depicted wearing an Iron Cross, a symbol that was adopted by Nazi Germany. While it may not have been as widely recognized by younger audience as, say, other symbols of hate, it has unfortunately become associated with negative connotations over time. The media itself didn't provide context about the symbol's background, which led to some fans and cosplayers purchasing and proudly wearing it. I don't want to fault young people who didn't know better, but I do believe this is something that should have been recognized or omitted from Germany's design entirely. With many of the nations dressed in garbs resembling World War II era uniforms, there are moments that can feel a bit unsettling. While I don't believe that the intent was to glorify or make light of historical events, some moments do come across as out of touch with the gravity of the situations they reference. One example is how Russia is depicted with the Baltic states in subservient position, often cowering around him, all played for comedic effect. This portrayal, despite the real-life suffering and oppression that occurred during that time, feels especially tone-deaf given the historical context. As I mentioned earlier, there was significant outrage from Korean citizens over the planned portrayal of Korea in the show. In the comic, Korea is depicted as silly and quick to claim credit for things he didn't create, as well as perverted. Given the historical tensions between Korea and Japan, this portrayal was seen as deeply insensitive and offensive to many. Historical issues aside, there are some other odd moments in both the comic and anime. While some of these things can be attributed to popular tropes in anime and manga, especially of that era, that doesn't make them any less off-putting. Let's begin with the characterization of France. While I do like his character in episodes, in some, especially earlier ones, he comes off very weird.
Since you've come all this way, would you like me to read a little story from these books that I doubt you've heard before?
Oh yeah, it's got a ton of words in it, and I don't know what they are. Fancy pants, what does sexual act mean?
Oh, you don't even know that? Oh my, how adorable! It's something you do with someone you love. You can just pretend to love them too. Then you get to with their arms, or with their lips, or with their tongue. Also, there's the which is the most important. I personally like to.
This clip includes a teenage Italy and an older France. While not the best look, I will say that the comic strip this is based off is worse. The anime, while still quite weird, toned down a lot of the weirder stuff from the early comics. The comic has him say it's something you do with someone you like, and then asking Italy if he likes him.
That's weird.
Another one of these instances that is very questionable in the comic is when Holy Roman Empire is planning to leave for the war. In the anime, Chibi Talia gives him his broom, which she's been using the whole show. In the comic, however, yeah, he gives him his panties. Now, while Gakuen Hetalia as a dating sim was never released, it was created by the author, and the France bad ending was weird, as we went over in that section.
Brother,
So, it's time we delve into the discussion of racism, stereotyping, and representation. The English dub, while wildly popular and admittedly funny at times, is voiced almost entirely by a predominantly white cast, specifically a mostly white American cast putting on accents. How each person views the stereotyping is, I believe, subjective. Some might take great personal offense to it, while others might not care at all. The extent to which it becomes an issue often depends on the specific episode and the nature of the stereotype being depicted. I think the more important discussion lies in the character designs and the selection of countries represented. When you look at the lineups of characters, a certain similarity among them becomes pretty apparent. They're all the same skin tone, even the Asian countries. But what about the minor characters, you ask? Well, I could list Egypt, Turkey, Seychelles, Ancient Egypt, Cameroon, Cuba, India, Cyprus, and Vietnam. That's about all I could come up with for the moment. Most of these characters never made an appearance in the anime, and the ones that did were minor characters with only brief appearances. That said, there isn't much variety in their skin tones either. Most of these characters come across as very white, just like the main cast. That brings me to another point, the countries represented in Hetalia. There are over 60 countries portrayed, including micronations and nations that no longer exist. However, the overwhelming majority of them are European. While there are also several Asian countries included, they all share the same overarching issue. They appear distinctly white. There are 54 countries in Africa alone, yet only 3 are represented in Hetalia. Of those, only 1 has made a brief appearance in the anime, and none of them hold significant roles in the series. While there are 48 Asian countries, only 10 of them are represented in Hetalia. That raises the question, why is this the case? Is it due to ignorance on the part of the creator? He's a well-traveled individual who should have some understanding of geography and culture. The different countries of Africa, for example, have rich and unique histories that could easily provide material for characters and plotlines. Yet time and time again, the creator has chosen not to include them. Many incredibly creative fans have emerged over the years, designing their own original characters and reimagining existing ones in ways that I believe would outshine Himaruya's interpretations, should he ever attempt to incorporate them into the official work. These fan creations often offer more diversity, depth, and a greater respect for the cultures they represent, showcasing a level of thought and care that could easily elevate the representation within the series. While we're on the topic of representation, I'd like to bring up something that's been bothering me. The female characters, or more accurately, the way female characters are utilized in canon. I'm not 100% sure on this list, but I could count about 13 female characters in Hetalia's canon. Yes, only 13 of the 60+ characters. 2 of them, ancient Greece and ancient Egypt, are no longer considered countries in the modern sense, making their inclusion even more questionable. So let's take a brief look at the female characters that appear in Hetalia canon. Ancient Egypt has not appeared in the anime and only makes a couple of appearances in the manga. Ancient Greece has only appeared in chibi sketches. Belarus appears in the anime, and her main character trait is being romantically obsessed with and yandere for her brother, Russia. Belgium appears briefly in the anime. She's the younger sister of the Netherlands and older sister of Luxembourg. Described as mature, cheerful, and sisterly, though some materials depict her as attention-seeking and fond of her brother's messages. Czechia appears briefly in the anime with a love for spas as her main trait. Hungary features in multiple anime episodes, portrayed as strong and intimidating, but her plotlines often revolve around her relationships with male characters. Liechtenstein appears in the anime as the meek, shy younger sister of Switzerland, with her life revolving around her brother. Monaco appears briefly in the anime. She views France as an older brother figure and relies on him, granting him favors. Seychelles appears briefly in the anime. She cannot cook and is depicted as having a strange relationship with France in the Gakuen Hetalia lore. Taiwan appears in the anime and is characterized by her love of fashion and cute things. Ukraine appears in the anime as Russia's older sister. Much of her characterization focuses on her poverty and her large breasts. Vietnam appears briefly in the anime, portrayed as headstrong but somewhat shy. Hue, a micronation with no anime appearance. There seems to be a noticeable pattern with the female characters. Many are relegated to minor roles, with their personalities and storylines often reduced to relationships with male characters or superficial traits. The female characters in Hetalia tend to represent smaller nations, often depicted as more dependent on their larger male counterparts. None of the main cast, the allies or the Axis, are female. Arguably the most fleshed out female character is Hungary, but even her badass nature was significantly toned down as she matured, focusing more on her relationships with male characters. I don't wish to accuse the author of outright sexism, but I do feel that the lack of substantial female characters reflects preconceived notions about women. While I understand that the author is male and may naturally write from his own perspective, it feels disappointing considering that Hetalia's primary audience has historically been predominantly female. This lack of representation doesn't sit quite right with me. The fandom. Ooh, boy. The fandom, unfortunately, hasn't always done itself any favors in terms of leaving a positive impression. While many fans were young and probably unaware of the problematic behaviors they were engaging in, there were also older fans who, despite being fully aware of historical events, made little effort to act responsibly. The 2010s were definitely a time of edgelord behavior, both online and offline, but that doesn't mean it was ever socially acceptable or excusable. Some fans participated in harmful or insensitive actions without considering the broader implications. And it's important to recognize that just because something was popular or widely accepted at the time doesn't make it right. In 2010, during Anime Boston, the popularity of Hetalia led to many cosplayers planning to attend. One Prussia cosplayer organized a photo shoot with other cosplayers portraying Germanic nations. The shoot was set in a public area just outside the convention, not far from a Holocaust memorial. This happened in April, during Passover, which is a major Jewish holiday. I think you can tell where this is going. For some reason, likely viewing it as just harmless dark humor, the cosplayers decided to perform a Nazi salute. Which, yikes. I genuinely cannot fathom why anyone would do this. Admittedly, news of the incident spread quickly, and the cosplayers were condemned both within and outside the fandom. The organizer of the photo shoot did apologize on LiveJournal, but their initial apology was merely for having done it so close to a memorial site. After receiving more backlash, they eventually posted a fuller apology for the incident itself. I will refrain from naming the cosplayer involved here. While the Anime Boston incident itself is bad enough, there were also multiple cosplayers who straight up cosplayed Nazi Germany and Prussia, wearing the signature red armband with a swastika, and posting it online with their face and everything. I will say, at the very least, the comments on posts like these generally condemned the behavior. However, it is worth noting that many of these critical comments are more recent. That said, this kind of behavior wasn't exactly considered normal even back then. Was it allowed to slide more easily? Probably. But I'm not here to make excuses for these actions, nor do I want to. I am censoring the faces of these people, and I also won't include the handles of the cosplayers involved. All I can hope is that they have grown as people and educated themselves, because this is disgusting. Much like the issue with problematic cosplay, this point also concerns questionable fan content, specifically fan art. While there were certainly cosplayers donning Nazi garb and performing salutes, there was arguably an even greater amount of fan art depicting similar themes. It's likely that creating and sharing such content felt easier for some, as posting under an online pseudonym carries far less accountability than engaging in public displays while wearing Nazi symbols. It is genuinely unsettling how eagerly some fans drew Nazi Germany and proudly posted their work adorned with hate symbols. While I understand the desire to create meaningful or impactful art, or even edgy art, this was absolutely not the route to take. It crosses a line, turning historical atrocities into thoughtless aesthetic choices rather than treating the subject with the gravity it deserves. Similarly, there was quite a lot of art of Imperial Japan and also 9/11 themes. Shipping was a huge part of the Hetalia fandom, and with such a dedicated young fanbase, friction was inevitable. Unfortunately, this often escalated into genuine fights, with fans sending each other hate and even threats over their preferred pairings. There's also something to be said about the nature of the ships themselves. As is common in most fandoms, gay ships dominated the scene. In Hetalia's case, I believe this ties back to the representation of female characters in the franchise. With so few women present, and many of them lacking significant canon lore or personality, fans naturally gravitated towards male characters. Additionally, the official media played heavily into this dynamic. often including flirtatious lines and moments between male characters. It's no surprise that fans latched onto these interactions and created countless pairings around them. While plenty of fans were queer themselves, myself included, it's worth highlighting the fine line between representation and fetishization. In fandom spaces, particularly those engaging with yaoi couples, it was, and still is to some degree, common to assign characters rigid roles as top seme and bottom uke, while in reality, these terms only refer to preferences in the bedroom. Fans often extended these labels into defining personality traits. This tendency transformed many dynamics into something more akin to stereotypical straight couples, with the seme being dominant, stoic, or protective, and the uke being soft, shy, or submissive. Such portrayals often flatten the characters and reduce their relationships to cliches, neglecting the potential for more nuanced and realistic representations of queer dynamics. This was by no means a phenomenon unique to Hetalia. It was rampant across other fandoms, and even in a lot of queer media at the time. However, in Hetalia, I noticed this dynamic frequently playing out across popular ships. For example, fans of Germany and Italy often portrayed Italy as extremely feminine and small. Similarly, in the America and England or France and England ships, England was frequently pictured as smaller, shy, or more traditionally bottom-coded, which often striped the character of his more complex or abrasive traits. Perhaps one of the more contentious portrayals is Japan in Asakiku. Many fans looking back have expressed discomfort with how Japan was often depicted as hyper-feminine, shy to the point of infantilization, or exoticized in a way that leaned heavily into Orientalist stereotypes. These dynamics reveal more about broader cultural biases and the way fandom has historically framed queer relationships than they do about the characters themselves. I feel it's important to at least briefly address the amount of questionable content in shipping material as well. For a lack of a better term, there was a significant amount of shota art. Much of the fan art and doujinshi blurred the line between adult and childlike designs, with some works even fully depicting characters as children in explicit situations. The same issue extended to fanfiction. While I don't want to cite specific examples, it's worth noting that much of this content was hosted on platforms outside of AO3. This often made it alarmingly easy to come across something disturbing that hadn't been properly tagged. Another noteworthy aspect of fanfiction was the oddly large amount of, how should I put it, necro-related content? Ugh. Okay, back to the point. The often uncontrolled bursts of emotion and anger that dominated the shipping spaces of the fandom also spilled into other areas. Again, I will remind you how the original translator of Hetaoni was harassed and ultimately chased offline for not catering to the demands of certain fans. This pattern was not unique to Hetalia. Many creators faced similar treatment as the fanbase grew larger and more chaotic. With any large fan base predominantly made up of younger individuals, toxicity often becomes inevitable, a trend that continues to be visible even today. What is the legacy of Axis Power's Hetalia? Is the fandom dead? This is a difficult question to answer. I wouldn't say the fandom is completely dead. While it has certainly diminished in size, it's still active to some degree. The 7th and most recent season of the anime was released in 2021, with the dub following in 2022. The musicals continue to thrive as well, with the latest one debuting last year. The manga, or webcomic, is still ongoing as well. It's also worth noting that anytime something political or crazy happens in the world, the fans do make some sort of resurgence. Will we ever get another season of Hetalia? Who knows? Will the fandom ever be as huge as it once was? Probably not. But none of that is to say that Hetalia hasn't left its mark on the cultural subconscious. In fact, this is something I find quite amusing. Mediums reminiscent of Hetalia continue to pop up now and again, gaining surprising amounts of traction. Country balls, sometimes referred to as Poland ball, is a geopolitical satirical art style that originated in 2009 and has gained significant popularity online. In this style, countries are represented as simple balls adorned with their flag and eyes. These country balls are often placed in comedic scenarios that highlight stereotypes, political opinions, and international relations in a humorous, sometimes exaggerated way. These comics and cartoons were easy to create with simply a mouse and a PC equipped with MS Paint. Country humans are essentially an evolution of the country ball concept, bringing it closer to the style of Hetalia. These anthropomorphic versions of the country balls maintain the core elements, like the flag collars and round heads, but are given human bodies and clothing. Country humans are often depicted in comics, fan art, and animations, where they explore similar themes to those seen in Hetalia, such as political humor, international relations, and stereotypes. I think these two veer uncomfortably close to the same issues that Hetalia faced. They stereotype the characters in much the same way, and with a young fan base, it feels like we're bound to repeat the same mistakes. Yes, there are personified versions of the Third Reich, with a swastika flag, and Imperial Japan, for example. These designs and works are extremely blatant, showing up as some of the first results when searching through Google or DeviantArt. These works are far more recent than those of Hetalia, which by that point had already received fair amounts of backlash for the behavior of the fanbase. And these works are far more prevalent than they are in Hetalia tags, at least currently. It really does seem we are doomed to repeat cycles, never learning from the past. How about we shift to something more positive for a change? The Miku around the world trend made waves this past year, and for good reason. I believe this trend originated from Doodly, aka @thecat_Mitsu on Twitter, who drew a Brazilian-inspired design for Miku, the beloved Vocaloid. This sparked a wave of creativity, inspiring artists from around the globe to design their own versions of Miku, reimagined with influences from their respective cultures. This trend was absolutely delightful, celebrating diverse cultural clothing, traditions, and artistic styles. Many posts included comedic or playful elements, adding to the joy of it all. It was truly heartwarming to see people unite in a collaborative celebration of creativity and culture through the shared love of Miku. So what have country balls, country humans, and Miku around the world shown us? The youth yearn for Hetalia. While that might be an oversimplification of current trends, there's something to be said about how every few years something new emerges that bears a striking resemblance to Hetalia's core concept. The allure of personified nations and designs inspired by this idea seems to remain strong. It's easy to see why this concept continues to attract creators. The idea of turning countries or cultures into characters is inherently rich with creative potential. It allows for playful interpretations, meaningful cultural exploration, or even humor. The room for imagination and innovation with this framework makes it an appealing canvas for artists and writers alike. That being said, it is important to be aware of the potential pitfalls of these endeavors. I can't believe I have to say this, but don't draw Nazi art. Don't draw imperialist symbols. Don't glorify and diminish real-world colonization or genocide as a simple plot point or quirky character flaw. So, you've made it to the end of this. I commend you for your bravery and patience in sticking around through all of this. Is there a final verdict on Hetalia? On the fandom? That's a tough question to answer. The fandom undeniably crossed some lines, and I don't want to minimize those instances. Additionally, media that anthropomorphizes nations will almost inevitably be at least somewhat political or biased, shaped by the perspectives and beliefs of its creators. That said, the majority of the fandom wasn't as extreme as its worst examples. Was it cringy and annoying at times? Absolutely! But that was par for the course with any large anime fandom of the 2010s. Ship wars, obsessing over favorite characters, none of it was unique to Hetalia. For a time, that's just how fandoms operated. And as I previously mentioned, these same tendencies can still be seen in today's fandoms with predominantly younger audiences. While the show's tone is lighthearted, many of its choices regarding stereotypes and characterizations are fair targets for criticism. I wouldn't fault anyone for highlighting these issues, as their concerns are often rooted in valid observations. While Tumblr might have lost its popularity, it is still a hub for a lot of fan spaces and has grown and matured a bit since its worst moments. I believe it's worth going through the Hetalia critical tag on there to educate yourself more on the thoughts of others. There are some well-written and informative think pieces and retrospectives from both former and current fans. These posts offer a deeper perspective on the series' flaws and its place in fandom culture, making them valuable resources for anyone curious about the topic. But I'd like to add my 2 cents here. While I don't think Hetalia is a literary masterpiece or anything of the sort, it undeniably had an impact on me. It encouraged me to learn more about history. Sure, some people may have taken the show at face value without diving deeper into the topics it touched on, but for others, it served as a spark. It inspired many young viewers to pay closer attention in history class and explore historical events and cultures beyond what the show presented. While the fandom had its moments of genuinely abhorrent behavior, I don't believe the blame should be placed on everyone who was a fan. As mentioned earlier, much of this cringe behavior was typical of fandoms at the time. The wave of cringe culture that swept through online spaces in the mid-2010s served as a harsh deterrent for earnest and passionate creativity, often unfairly stigmatizing fans who simply wanted to engage with the media they loved. Hetalia brought closer many talented artists who found a sense of community and eventually went on to pursue their own individual paths. It offered a place for lonely, often misunderstood kids and adults alike to find belonging, and in that, there is something truly beautiful. Personally, I started my own creative journey by making cringy art and OCs for Hetalia and Creepypasta. I wrote fanfic for Hetalia on Quotive and ended up meeting one of my best friends through that experience. I had fun, found inspiration to keep drawing, to keep writing, and for that, I'll always be grateful to the fandom spaces of that time. They provided me with support, encouragement, and the spark to keep going, and that's something I'll always cherish. The Hetalia fandom lives on to this day, albeit smaller and now mostly consisting of older fans. It's still charming to see people's unique take on the characters, their creative works, or even their valid critiques of the media. If you're interested in exploring some of the more current content, I recommend checking out the Hetalia or HWS tags on platforms like Tumblr or even Twitter. It's a nice way to connect with others who still appreciate the series while seeing how it's evolved with the community over time. While I firmly believe in being critical of the media you consume, thinking deeply about its contents, I also don't think it's fair to hate on people who are simply having fun and not hurting anyone. Fandom spaces have lost a lot of the spark they once had, with the fear of being labeled cringe now deterring people from expressing themselves freely. While the era of DeviantArt rants and shaming may have passed, I still see this borderline bullying behavior carry over to platforms like TikTok, the art lore trend and the way beginner artists are bullied online is genuinely disgusting to me, and I feel much of this stems from the roots of cringe culture. It's disheartening to see such negativity replace the creativity and fun that once flourished in fandom spaces. There's something incredibly liberating about embracing the cringe and being unapologetically yourself. Be loud, be annoying, make bad art, create overpowered Mary Sues, whatever brings you joy. Yes, it is important to educate yourself and avoid being willfully ignorant, but at the end of the day, it's okay to have unabashed, unashamed, cringe-filled fun. Letting go of the fear of judgment allows for creativity, self-expression, and a sense of freedom that's so often stifled by the societal expectations of us. So embrace the fun, the flaws, and the chaos, because that's where some of the most memorable moments of fandom and art come from. This script has been a journey to put together, and I've put in a lot of time and research. While I realize I've glossed over some topics, I hope this deep dive has been interesting to anyone who decided to watch or listen. I'm weirdly passionate about the fandom spaces of that era, and I find the evolution of fan bases to be such a fascinating topic. If you have any thoughts or memories of Hetalia, or just want to share your feelings, feel free to comment below. I'd love to have a conversation about it with anyone who was part of it or simply interested in learning more. For now, that's it from me, Adri. Have a great rest of your day, and go out there and be cringe and be free. Bye!